Hey everybody, Robert from Black Belt Gaming. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm continuing my read through of Dragonslayer, the role-playing game. Remember that this is a mix of basic with some of the enrichment from first edition AD&D. Very similar to the way that I played back in the 80s. Sort of like last time, I'll be reading some sections, paraphrasing some others, giving some thoughts and comments as we go along. Today, we'll talk about character creation and ability scores. The first rule of Dragonslayer player character creation is simple. All characters eventually die. Players need to play their characters with guile to ensure survival at first level. Remember, the maze controller, basically the referee, game master, never kills player characters. Players kill their characters through reckless play or fate of the dice. So maze controller never kills player characters. If we look back at the tenets that we went through last time, I think I can find the exact quote. If you choose to engage in combat, it is the maze controller's job, playing the monsters, to kill you. So does the maze controller kill you or not? Well, I think it's saying that once combat starts and the dice start rolling, well, that's when, fate of the dice can kill you. I think that's what he's meaning there. Let's go through the character creation process. First one, you get your character sheet. Very, very simple, very clean character sheet. Much less complicated than things from 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition. Read through the ability scores, races, classes to get a feel. You roll 3d6 7 times, and you drop the lowest number. And you assign the ability scores as you desire. So first of all, we need to make sure what race we want to play. And this is very similar to AD&D First Edition. You've got dwarves, elves, gnomes, halflings, half-elves, and half-orcs. But there is an additional character race, and that's the Cyclopsmen. If you've ever seen the 80s movie Krull, there is a man, he's not a giant, like a giant size, but he's big. He's got one eye, so he looks kind of a cross between a man and a cyclops. That's what you've got here. This was brought into the game. We're going to talk more about the race later in some more detail, but nevertheless, he's one of the ones listed here. Demi-humans receive adjustments, bonuses, and penalties to their ability scores. So it still doesn't exactly say something I have a question about, which is, let's say you're supposed to have a certain minimum score to qualify to be a particular race, but that race does give you a bonus in that ability. So let's say, just for example, you need a certain constitution score to be a race. Your constitution score is 1 point shy to qualify to be that race. But when you choose that race, your constitution is boosted by +1. Can you still choose that race? If you choose that race and you get the bonus, then you qualify. Or do you need to qualify first and then the bonus comes after? Probably, just from my own point of view, I would say if they chose the race and got the bonus, I would let them do it. We're really just talking about a single point. So that's probably how I would house rule it, but others may be different. Let's talk about briefly the classes, just listing them here. We have clerics, druids, and monks, fighters, barbarians, paladins, rangers, magic users, illusionists, thieves, and assassins. So certain races can play certain classes. Humans can play anything. but there are some restrictions there that you'll need to make a note of. Interesting point here on step 5 of character generation is that level 1 characters begin play with full hit points, plus or minus your constitution modifier. So a lot of old school games don't do that, but I think it's a good idea. Start with full hit points at first level. Give your characters a chance to get started. Things are hard enough in old school D&D already. You roll for your gold. You determine your armor class after you buy your equipment and such. Armor class is old school, descending. The lower the armor class, the better. You record your saving throws, and you record your 2-hit armor class. So, for example, your character requires a 20 to hit an armor class of 0, a 19 to hit a 1, an 18 to hit a 2, etc. You name your character, give him a basic description, and think about a 1 or 2 sentence backstory. As far as backstory goes, and even descriptions go, back in the day when we played, we described our character kind of on the spot. We didn't write it down. And backstory, I don't remember us ever really doing anything much with that. Backstories were something I don't think I really saw much until watching some people on YouTube. And that was years and years later after I started playing. So for many years during the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, people might have a little description that they're going for, but elaborate backstories, I don't think I really saw much of that until maybe 3rd edition. Character death was far more common in earlier editions, so I just don't think we put so much into backstories back then. But other groups may have done it differently. I mean, we all kind of played this game differently from group to group. Let's get into ability scores. By the way, if you're listening to this and you played back in the day, say 80s or 90s, did you do much with backstories for your, basic 1st edition, 2nd edition characters? 2nd edition may have had some, because the style of play sort of changed a bit with more campaigns and game worlds and that kind of thing. Okay, ability scores. This is going to be in the order that I grew up with, so very comfortable with this. Strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma. Ability scores will range from 3 to 18, regardless of racial bonuses or penalties. So you're not going to go below a 3 or higher than an 18. So let's take these one at a time, just a couple of comments as we go along. Strength measures the character's physical and muscular prowess. It's important to fighters, and a high strength will increase your ability to hit and score damage with handheld weapons. It also gives you, according to your modifier, a bonus on opening stuck doors, which I think we'll get to a little later. The modifiers may be a bit different than you're used to, especially with more recent editions. 9 to 12, a score of strength, 9 to 12, is average. There's no modifier. A 13 to 15 is a +1, a 16 to 17 is a +2, and an 18 is a +3. But as we go down, a 6 to 8 is a -1, 4 to 5 is -2, and a 3 is a -3. It just says that even if you did have that very low strength of 3, but you managed to hit your opponent with a weapon, even if you roll a 1 on the weapon damage dice, it would be 1 -3. you're always going to do at least 1 hit point of damage if you hit your opponent. So that's going to be true for monsters too. So always at least 1 hit point of damage. Intelligence. Intelligence determines your ability to acquire, process, and apply knowledge. Magic users and illusionists, they really want the higher intelligence here. So we're going to go into more about magic users and illusionists soon. So just off the top of my head here, I can't recall if a higher intelligence may give you a bonus spell. We're just going to have to wait to see about that. But looking at the chart, we have the same modifiers in the same ranges as strength, but we have an additional column here of reading and writing. And if you are below average, you can partially write. If you're kind of way below average, then you don't know how to read or write. And if you're at the absolute bottom, you might even have some trouble speaking. So that's your intelligence. Wisdom describes your mental discipline and capacity to understand and gather insight into the nature of existence. So clerics, druids, and monks require a high wisdom. Wisdom here is going to give you a modifier to your saving throw against mind-influencing magical effects. So if you're trying to maybe make a saving throw against a fireball, probably not going to apply. But if it's dealing with some sort of mind-influencing magical effects, maybe there's some kind of... I'll have to look at the spell descriptions to be sure, but something like charm or... I don't know, maybe there's an illusion or something. We'll get to the spells later. But you can get your wisdom, excuse me, may provide you with a bonus to your saving throw. Dexterity. Dexterity reflects your motor skill, hand-eye coordination, reflexes, and balance. It allows you to dodge attacks and also improves your missile ranged attack ability. So there is a statement here that thieves require high dexterity to pick pockets and remove traps. It's certainly encouraged for thieves to have a high dexterity, mainly for a reason related to experience points, which I'll get to. But that's actually a false statement. It's not required. You could have a 3 dexterity and still pick pockets and remove traps without penalty. So a little misleading there, but still, thieves want a high dexterity. Your scores and modifiers are the same as strength. An interesting note, though, I don't think this was true in old school, but your dexterity did in old school, like first edition, modify your attacks with ranged weapons. So it could give you a better chance to hit. But I don't think it modified damage. But in this game, it does. So you can apply your modifier to damage with your ranged weapons as well. And that's cool. I think maybe that started with 3rd edition, perhaps. Again, just like the hand-to-hand weapons, if you hit with a ranged weapon, you're going to do at least 1 hit point of damage minimum. The modification to your armor class is also based on your modifier, so +3 or -3. In this case, the -3 is better. So if you have a dexterity of 18, you subtract 3 points from your armor class. And in this game, that's good. So if you have a 3 in dexterity, you're going to be adding 3 points to your armor class just because you're so slow. Constitution. Constitution represents a character's physical health and stamina. This ability score modifier increases your base hit points. So all classes can benefit from a higher constitution. So I remember from AD&D first edition that fighters could benefit more from a higher constitution than other classes. I think they could get a maximum of +2, maybe. And I think fighters could get as many as 4 additional hit points. That's not in this version of the game. So anybody, it's following the same modifier spread as strength. Any class can either get a bonus or a penalty of 1 to 3 based on their hit points, uh, based on their class, due to the higher constitution. So even if a magic user has a 13 constitution, he's going to get that +1, and a fighter with a 13 constitution is going to get that +1. Just a note here, let's say you have a very poor constitution and you're rolling for hit points at 2nd level, and you roll a 1, you're supposed to subtract 3. Well, you can't go into the negatives. You're not going to die from leveling up. So you're always going to get at least 1 hit point per level. Finally, charisma. Charisma refers to a character's physical beauty, allure, persuasiveness, magnetism, and leadership ability. So let's take a look at this. A standard sort of average score in charisma, 9 to 12. You can have as many as 3 henchmen, and your charisma also affects their morale, and their morale would be around a 7. So remember, you're rolling 2d6 to check morale, and if it's equal to a 7 or lower, they stay and fight with you and take your orders. If it's an 8 or higher, they might break and run. So even interesting here, even if you have a charisma score of 3, you're just not not much of a leader at all. You can have 0 henchmen, but maybe you're with other henchmen and they start to, they were hired by others in the party, but the other party members may have dropped. You can sort of step into the leadership role, but the henchmen only have a morale of 4. So most likely they're going to run and not be willing to stand by your side. 18 is the best, 6 henchmen, and a morale of 10. So recently, well, it has not so recently, it's about a year ago, I played in a very enjoyable 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game. And I had created a human fighter and intentionally put a higher charisma score in place, really hoping that I could gain some henchmen to help my fighter. And I could have put that into, say, Constitution or Dexterity, but I thought, I'm going to be a little leader here, and I'm going to put this in Charisma. But doggone it, the Dungeon Master, I really like him, but the Dungeon Master didn't allow us to have henchmen. And so it was kind of a wasted score for me. Okay, finally, ability prime requisite. All classes have an ability score that they favor. And so this is the most important ability score for that character class. For example, wisdom is important for clerics and strength for fighters. If you have an above average or below average score, you're going to get a bonus or a penalty to your experience points. So if you've got a 13 to 15, you're going to get plus 5% bonus to your experience points. So if you got awarded 100 experience points, you're going to get 105. 16 to 18 gives you plus 10%. 6 to 8, on the other hand, gives you a 5% penalty, and 3 to 5 gives you minus 10%. So that pretty much wraps it up. We're ready to head into the exciting world of character races next time. So please join me for that. and I'll catch you later for some more Dragonslayer.